Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the June 4th Post Falls City Council meeting. Rhiannon is filling in for Shannon again tonight. Rhiannon, please note that all council members are present with the exception of Councilor Shove, who is excused tonight. And we do have an announcement. Tonight we bid farewell, not good riddance, farewell, to Bill Melvin, who is attending his final council meeting after 29 years of service to the city of Post Falls. Bill, on behalf of the entire city, we want to extend to you our deep gratitude for your dedication and wish you the best in your well-deserved retirement. Thank you for everything you've done for your city, and I'm sure you will find plenty to do in your retirement. I've talked to people. I talked to someone just the other day, and I said, how you like in retirement? And he says, I can't adjust. I said it took me about 37 seconds to adjust, and I'm sure with your activities, I'm sure you'll do fine.
And thank you, Mayor. I have a list of projects. Anytime you own a home, you're 10 years behind. But my wish is that I've had a positive impact on the community and the culture of the workplace during my tenure here. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
There are none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict? Would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the May 21st, 2024 City Council meeting. Item B is from minutes from the May 22nd, 2024 City Council workshop. Item C is payables May 17th through May 29th, 2024. Item D is acceptance of property, rights-of-way and easement, Prairie, Zorros, Roundabout. And item E is Arche annexation grant of easement.
Any questions on the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Stigleader. Aye. Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Westland.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We do not have any public hearings tonight. Next item up would be unfinished business and returning ordinances and resolutions. First item is a contract amendment for the Water Reclamation Facility Hopper Modification Project.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Craig Bornpool, Utilities Manager for the city. And tonight I'm bringing forth an additional services contract for our solids and odor control project that we're doing at the Water Reclamation Facility. So the initial scope of the project, we were really looking at just the hopper building and modifications to that. These are kind of O&M required projects to increase efficiency and reduce some of the issues that we're having with the building. We tried to limit that scope to hit an anticipated contract bidding number. We didn't hit that. I brought that forth a couple weeks ago, and those bids were rejected. So in anticipation of that, we had talked to our engineering consultant about expanding the scope to include some additional O&M work that needs to be done at the facility. That O&M work that we're talking about, we're adding work to our biofilter odor control system. And the goal there is replacing the media. That media has a lifespan until it's no longer effective. And then we're also going to be looking at modifying the design a little bit to adjust the air distribution in the bottom, try and get a little bit better even distribution of air and try and scour that foul air a little bit better at our biofilter. So that's the goal of that additional work that we're looking to do with this amendment to the contract. A little bit of the site layout. The lower yellow marker, you probably can't quite see it. That's where our biosolids hopper building is. And then just due north of there, kind of close to Celtice, is our biofilter odor control. And that's where the additional work would be taking place. Reminder of the outside. This is the outside of the solids hopper where we'll be working on that. And here is an image of our biofilter. On top of that is woody chips. Underneath those woody chips is a gravel rock layer that allows for distribution of the air. We're pulling air from our headworks. We're pulling air from the solids hopper building. And then also in the right-hand side of the photo here is our EQ tanks, and we're pulling foul air from there as well to run through the filter, try and scour some of those odors before it goes into the atmosphere. It's kind of a closer look of the woody debris, and the pipes in there are some pipes that we've added since this was put online to try and clean out those pipes that distribute the air. So modifying that design is part of what this design contract amendment would do is formalize that, get it a little bit better. So the financials of this additional services, it's a little bit unique in an engineering contract. What we've asked for here is time and material estimates. We think based on some of the initial information that we have from when it was first designed, it should be a pretty quick retrofit to modify those original drawings, but we wanted to have some buffer in case we get into something unexpected. So we're really trying to control the cost by only paying for the actual hours that they spend on it. We think it's going to be a minimal effort. We want to have a little bit of buffer just in case we get into something, like I said, a little bit more complex. So within this amendment, there's 3 separate portions. One is the engineering design, the additional design. There's money for bidding. We'll be rebidding this as a competitive bid when the package is then fully put together. And then there's also a resident project representative portion. And I'll note that I italicized this to remind myself that if council authorizes this amendment, we still aren't authorizing that additional project representative. We just want to have it on hold in case we need some, again, additional time in the field. We're working out there all the time. We're going to have oversight of it, but if we need some additional engineering support during the actual construction, then we may authorize that. So again, we're trying to control costs on this one, but don't want to come back to you over and over and over. So that's the financials of the additional services contract before you tonight. We do have a budget code for this, part of our larger project on odors, solids, dewatering at the facility. And with that, I'd answer any questions.
Questions of Craig?
So you are asking us to approve the 11,000, you're just saying you're not planning on using it unless necessary?
Correct.
Okay.
I would move to approve the contract amendment for the Wharf Hopper Modifications Project.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion?
Feel so hip saying that.
Worf? I like it. Roll call, please.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Westland.
Aye.
Stigleader.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Craig. City Hall remodel project.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm John Beecham, Public Works Director, here to talk about awarding a bid for City Hall remodel project. As a note, hopefully this will be my last presentation on the remodel. If we do move forward, I would hand the actual project management duties off to Jackson Fleshman, our Public Works Project Manager. Not that it hasn't been fun going through the design process. So, quick outline of what I'll talk about, basically remind everybody of the project, talk about the bids, and then some next steps and questions and answers. We have started this project in 2021 with our facilities master planning, kind of outlining some of the things that were needed at the City Hall and a master financial plan to get us there. Since then, we've been doing the design work for this phase of the City Hall remodel project, and now we're moving into the bidding and hopefully construction. So as a reminder, that's basically what I just talked about, but as a reminder, the project includes office space remodel in the admin area and legal area of City Hall. Also adds a conference room in what is now the finance lobby. So if you historically came to pay your water bill at the city, you would go up to the second floor and wait in the lobby with a bunch of other people and then pay the water bill. Now everybody pays their bill online. It's a very quiet space. So especially with moving the utility billing out to the rotunda where it is now, that space isn't very well utilized. So putting a conference room there is a much better use of space. We'd be adding sound deadening and other improvements to the rotunda so you could actually use that space and have open houses in there where you can hear each other talk. The total cost is estimated at $1.2 million. I'll note that is an estimate. There are still some numbers that I don't have on that, including the furnishings number and the audiovisual number, which would be separate contracts. Bids were published a couple of months ago and opened on May 2nd. We did receive 4 bids. They were all very close together. Darden Enterprises was the apparent low, and after legal review and architect review, we do recommend moving forward with awarding the bid to Darden. There was one informality in their bid, and we just need to note that we're waiving this. We have the right to waive it under the bidding rules, but The proof of the signature authority for the person who signed the bid wasn't included with the packet, but they did provide it after the fact. So that's, we're recommending waiving that informality. The bid was for about $690,000. We are requesting a 10% contingency on that. And the engineer's estimate for the construction cost was about $950,000 to that 1.2 million. The range of bids on this, like I said, was really close. The highest bid was still underneath the engineer's, or the architect's estimate. Should have said architect. And with that, our recommendation is to move forward authorizing the bid award and the contingency.
John, you said, was I wrong? Did you not say 1.2 mil?
I believe the total cost for the project will be $1.2 million. So
Right now, if council approves it, it would only be for that Darden's bid plus a contingency?
correct.
758? Okay.
So the portion that would be under contract to Darden is only one of 4 major components.
Okay.
So the other things in the project, the 1.2 million is the entire
Entire
project.
project, okay.
Other things in there are the furnishings vendor, audiovisual
Audiovisual.
vendor, security vendor, and then there's some ancillary
Okay.
costs that'll be along the
I just
fire alarm work.
wanted to tie the 758 back to the 1.2, so. Any questions, John?
I'm curious, what fund is this coming out of, the general fund?
This comes out of money that's been set aside for facilities projects, and I talked a little bit about this in the council packet, but as part of the 2021 Facilities Master Plan, there's a financial plan that's kind of outlining all the projects that need to take place. We've been setting money aside in that facilities fund to fund those projects, and this money would come out of that fund if we move forward with it.
Okay, and one of the other projects in that is still the Public Works building?
That's correct.
And is there money enough to fund what needs to be done for that yet? Or are we still, I remember your bond presentation that we didn't move forward with.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is in the shorter term, like the 10-year time frame, our facilities plan has funding or will have funding with the assumptions we've built into it. So the Public Works Operations Center would be able to move forward in a phase 1 project. The entire facilities plan, after about 2033, we need to find additional funding for some of the projects. So, so those near-term projects, it appears we can move forward with at least the phase 1 work on most of them under current assumptions.
Okay, I guess my concern is I appreciate what we're doing in this building, but it seems largely functional, and what has been presented with the Public Works Department and some of the things that they struggle with, like having the exterior access to their restroom and really just not having the things that they need to do their job effectively. I'm concerned that maybe we could use some of this money to help them a little bit faster, so. I don't know that that's shared by everyone.
I
but-
wholeheartedly appreciate that concern, and I will say we are moving forward with the Public Works Operations Center. I think it was the last council meeting, or maybe 2 ago, we approved the architect contract to get that, basically the planning underway for that. And I don't think that moving forward with the City Hall remodel in any way impacts our choices in terms of what we have funding to do for the Public Works Operations Center.
Okay.
I will also say the Public Works Operations Center was forecast to be something that we did maybe 10, 15 years out when we did the facilities plan. So moving it up at all is an improvement over what we had in that plan. We were looking at just doing some interim improvements, and that's the conversation we've had with council a couple of times. We're trying to move that project up in the process, and it looks promising that we're able to do that.
That we have the funding to do that, even continuing on with the other things that were in that facilities master plan?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Questions, John?
I did have a quick next step slides. If we move forward with this tonight, there are some additional project components, like I mentioned. Some of those might come to you on the consent calendar just for the furnishings contract, if they are over that 50,000 limit that department heads can sign. And then construction would go on till about winter of this year.
No questions of John? No?
I would move to approve the City Hall remodel project recommendation of award.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Westland.
Aye.
Stigleader.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Next item up is the ordinance relating to city council meetings. Is that just an ordinance, or is there going to be, Chris, you have it?
Yes, sir. Thank you, council. This is filling in for Field tonight. He's at home ill. This is a follow-up to some discussions you had about amending the start times. It's currently codified in the city code. What's proposed before you is a draft ordinance. Basically, it changes by removing the set start time from our city code, section 2.04060. By removing that 6 o'clock start time, I think you've had some discussions with Field on this matter. So I think the direction from council was to bring back a draft ordinance and policy for your review and comment. It doesn't change the mechanics of how you do things. It just gives you a little more flexibility, and we discussed that in the policy as to whether or not the council wants to move forward in possibly amending some of their start times from going from a workshop into the start time. I know that there was some discussion about that, going from the workshops right into the regular city council agenda. So currently the meeting is noticed or agendized as a single meeting. So really, this would give you some flexibility if you get done early enough to take a vote and move forward, and then go straight from your workshop, assuming you got done early enough, into some of the regular council meeting.
One of the
matters.
concerns expressed was public hearings, and I noticed in the draft that public hearings would not start prior to the 6 o'clock start time we currently have.
Correct. So the ordinance just deals with a couple of the mechanics, and then the policy gets into the details on how and when you would move into a regular council, but not impairing the public's ability to participate in those public hearings.
Okay.
So I think, like I said, I think it's brought to you back tonight just for discussion purposes. You can review it and comment on it. It could be passed tonight if there were no changes. The version of the ordinance itself just has minimal changes. It just breaks out a couple of the provisions a little bit cleaner, and then the policy adopts as well.
How about any other comments or questions for
I
Chris?
agree with you, Mayor. I like the stipulation of what types of gatherings, like executive session prior to the public meeting, makes sense if we have a gap in time there. I like having that specified that public hearings will not start before 6 p.m. because that was one of the concerns that we had of keeping people in the loop of what's going on. So I think the draft is addressing everything that we discussed, and it looks good to me.
So, and in theory, you have the abilities normally to move your agenda around anyways. You can take item A before item B or anything else, and because the way the city does it, it's really just moving an agenda for any one of those large meetings to move things around. But we would take any suggestions, and like I said, if you want to sit and look at this language or you want to pass it tonight, you have the flexibility to do so.
What's the purpose of taking the start time basically out of city ordinance and then into a policy versus just putting that in the ordinance and not having a separate policy?
Sure. The codification of the 6 o'clock start time is not necessary under Idaho law anyways, because the city publishes its regular meeting agendas anyways. So having it codified there gives you a little bit more flexibility as to changing the start times. Because it's codified, it makes it more different to change if you need to shift it, or say you want to start at 5, then we got to go through a whole nother codification. By just removing that start time only in the ordinance itself, then the public will always be directed back to the city website to look at the agenda to figure out when the normal start times are.
So just because policies are easier to change than ordinances, that's the reason for having the policy govern it instead?
Well, and there's no reason to codify it into the code itself. So it gives you a little more flexibility. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes?
My recollection of the conversation that we had about this before was that we were not going to remove the 6 o'clock start time, but that we were going to put additional provisions in the ordinance that just said for what reasons and how we could move the start time if we wanted to. Something like we could start the executive session before 6 o'clock if we had a majority council vote at the previous meeting or at the workshop prior to the meeting. So I was a little bit surprised to see that it was removed entirely. as a start time in the ordinance.
And I apologize, Councilwoman, I wasn't part of those discussions. I wasn't there during those discussions when you were given direction to staff to follow up on this. I think that having the flexibility to start earlier probably conflicts with publishing a set start time for the 6 o'clock regular agenda. If you want to move things into an earlier agenda, it might conflict if you have a 6 o'clock set start time in the ordinance. So again, the city already publishes its agenda all the time for these workshops and its regular council meetings. In fact, I think we publish on a yearly basis. So having it in the ordinance itself doesn't change the ability of the city to do that, and it actually gives you the flexibility to move things up if you want to start things a little sooner after the workshop. So like I said, I apologize for the disconnect on that.
No worries. I think after our original conversation, I just did some random spot checking with the public and asked people that I ran into around town. And the consensus was that they liked the set start time, that they could always know without looking at the agenda what time the council meeting would start. And as far as flexibility goes, I personally think it is my responsibility to make it easier on the citizens that come, and flexibility for me is not the priority in this position. So at this point, I would not be in favor of taking it out.
I can add some to that because I was part of this discussion. The executive session is part of the regular session, so the executive session, the public is not privy to it in any case. So whether it's before 6 o'clock, after 6 o'clock, it makes no difference at all whatsoever as far as the public is concerned. So if the code states that we can't start a regular session until 6 o'clock, that also means the executive session. So we take that out of the code, but put it in our policy, which we also have to follow, that we can do the executive session prior to 6 o'clock, but everything else essentially has to be after. Then that still achieves the same effect. We can't start any public hearings, anything the public would be involved in until after 6 o'clock. But if we got a 5 o'clock workshop, it's done at 5:20, we've got an executive session that might take 25 minutes. That gives us the ability to bring that forward. We still have to start everything else at 6 by policy, which we can't violate. So.
Right, so we would still have to come, sit down, and start the meeting, say the pledge, and then we would exit to executive session and maybe come back at 6:05 or 6:03 or 5:52. I don't think that I don't think that what you're saying is wrong, and I don't think that it's necessarily bad. I don't think it's the most correct way to do the situation, and what we had discussed, what was discussed before, if we can't just allow for the executive session to be done by vote prior to the meeting, then I just don't think I'm in favor of the way that it's written presently.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Josh?
I like it. I think it gives us that flexibility because, like Joe said and Nathan said, if the public's not privy to that, if it allows in a time we're out of workshop and we have the time to do it, I think it's all right. I think it's good because nothing else that the public's privy to is starting till 6 anyways.
My understanding is if we opted to start it early, for example, if we had an executive session, we had time and we wanted to enter into executive session prior to the 6 o'clock start time, it would take a vote by council anyway, would it not?
The way the policy is drafted, yes.
Yeah.
Just a clarification on that. Would we be able to take a vote out of session to determine whether we're starting the meeting?
Because the whole
early?
meeting is basically, like I said, it's the workshop is noticed as part of your normal meeting. So your meeting's technically starting at 5, and you're rearranging the agenda to put things forward earlier than have normally been agendized at 6 o'clock. So the idea being, you can normally, like I said, the mayor can make a motion and say, hey, let's bump up this to item from item B to A. Does anybody have an issue with that? And normally the council is generally allowing the mayor to move the agenda as he needs to. It's formalizing that same process. Since your meeting technically starts at 5, it's giving the flexibility to do so, but upon consent of the rest of the council.
So that would be like a motion that we would do in the basement conference room
Yep.
prior to walking up here.
And the minutes would reflect that.
Okay. I'm still opposed to this. I was opposed to this when we discussed it before, and I'm still opposed to it. I appreciate the intentions behind it and the discussion of trying to put executive sessions first, but that still leaves us in the position of having to come in and we're going to do the pledge, and we're going to start the meeting, and are there amendments to the agenda, and then going off and doing our executive session, then coming back at an unknown time. And I don't think that's putting citizens first. I don't think that's good governance. I think it's really good for citizens who want to be able to participate that the meeting starts at a certain time and they know that time ahead of time. The pledge starts at exactly 6 o'clock. We start the meeting and it goes in a certain order. And having the executive session at the end of the meeting makes the most sense to me logically anyway. And so I would not support being able to move this forward like that without notifying people several hours or 48 hours in advance, which I think is required by the open meeting laws.
Warren?
Want to make sure that we're on the same page. So quickly, just stepping back a little bit, typically ordinances are intended to regulate the outside world, sort of the citizens at large. Policy is really what we do to regulate our own behavior, what the city does. So it's a little bit out of place to have the start time in the ordinance because it's regulating how we do business rather than regulating the city at large. What really drives the start time for our city council meetings, the state law requires that we publish notice once a year that says this is the time our regular meetings are going to start. That's the date, that's the time that matters. So whatever we say in that notice, that's the time that we have to start the meeting. And so it's a little bit odd to have it baked into your ordinance just because it's the wrong tool to get to the same place. At the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter to any of us. We've had it this way for a long time and we're going to live with it and it's going to be fine. It's just a little bit odd, and we're trying to address some of the technical niggles that Chris was alluding to that actually our meeting is starting at 5. It's one meeting, workshop, regular agenda. It's one meeting that begins at 5. And so we're trying to address some technical defects in how we're handling things, but we can live with the way it's currently set up. But I wanted to make sure that you at least thought through that when you're talking ordinances, this is typically not ordinance territory. This is typically policy territory because it's regulating how the city functions.
A question
Yeah.
about that.
Right.
And I should know this, but I don't. Are we noticing our regular meeting starting at 5 now?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm guessing 6. My guess is that we probably need to flex that. It's probably posted right out here and I could go look at it, but I don't know off the top of my head.
So we're really not noticing our workshop as part of the regular meeting.
Yeah, and we need
now.
to flex that. We talked about that the other day. That's something we need to make sure that we've got right.
Yeah, I believe all the public notices say the meeting starts at 6, and then just at the top of the agenda, it says workshop at 5.
Mhm.
That's how it's set up right now.
But it's part of our regular meeting, which is what the state said, the one that you have all of the time, that's your regular meeting, and you post that annually saying, here's what time our regular meetings are going to be.
So that would be 5 o'clock.
And that's typically 5 o'clock.
So a workshop is considered so we're using the term regular. It's considered a regular meeting?
Yeah, we'll talk about this someday. It's a wonky term. There really is no such thing as workshop under state law. It's not a term that really means anything. You have regular meetings and special call meetings. That's what the code speaks to. And so anytime you get together on a regular basis, it's a regular meeting. If we have a special call meeting where we're saying we need to get together to deal with something that's come up, an emergent situation, that's a special meeting. That's the only distinction.
So it's more of an agenda item. The workshop's more of an agenda item.
So if we're announcing our regular meeting starting at 5, which we were calling our workshops now, and we happen to not have a workshop, we would just notice it.
Yeah, we would list it, normal start time is 5 p.m. if we're doing it as one agenda. And if we don't have one, the agenda we're publishing would essentially say we're starting at 6 tonight.
I hate to say that this opens up like a can of worms, but now that we're making that, if we're making that distinction, we're calling the workshop part of our regular meeting, it's really not conducive to the public coming. There's very limited seats. It's in a different area than up here. That seems like a larger conversation than just talking about changing the ordinance if we are actually starting our regular meetings at 5 and not up here.
I hear you, and that's part of the reason we're looking at doing another conference room upstairs that's a little more cohesive and set up for more public participation than being in the basement, honestly. So we're trying to address some of that, but how it appears on an agenda doesn't change the function of what that portion of the meeting is for.
And council, the only other comment I'd make is generally the people that are in attendance or looking at the meetings are going to look for the start time published on the agenda. They're not going to go to the city code and dive through the ordinances and find a section to figure out what time the start time of the meeting is. So from a practical perspective, they're going to the website, they're looking at the agenda saying, okay, this meeting starts at 6, this item starts at 5:30 or anything else. That's where they get their information
Which
from.
would be a reflection of policy, not ordinance.
True.
I understand that there's no legal difference between the workshops and the council meetings here in terms of the requirements for the meeting and all of that, but there's very much a difference in terms of the structure and the feel of the meeting. At the workshops, we're down in the basement, we're not passing motions, we're not doing formal business, it's a more informal environment, and I really like that. I actually like the distinction between having the more informal discussion kind of sessions, and then we're coming up here and we're doing formal business, and this is a more Robert's Rules kind of structure, and that makes a lot of sense to me to keep them separate, at least by policy, if not by state code. So if this was just, we're going to take the 6 o'clock start time out of the ordinance to put it in a policy, I'd be okay with that. But the flexible start time for this portion of the meeting, that's the part that I would object to.
And like I said, I don't think any of us have a really strong feeling one way or the other. I think it was an attempt to fix a technical issue that we have. And however the council wants to move on this, I think we're completely happy with whatever the outcome is.
Now, for me, it's not that big. It's not that big of a deal either way. I don't think we have to do the pledge and slam the gavel before we start the workshop. If we, take the start time out of the policy, we could still do a workshop. If we got time, we could do an executive session, which you can't do any formal action during anyway. Then come out of that, wait for 6 o'clock, slam the gavel, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and move on with the rest. Again, not a big deal either way. It just seems kind of strange to me that if we can get business that's inherently non-public out of the way, so we don't have to keep a whole room full of people here any longer than we have to, then why not? It doesn't hurt anything. That's my thought.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, and I think I'm in the same boat. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill on this. I think the purpose of it was just to increase the efficiency of our time here, because I do think that's also a responsibility we have to the public. So, I guess I'm lukewarm on either way of it. It's just an effort to streamline things for us.
Well, we can either make a motion now or have you bring back, modify the draft to reflect any comments. What's council's preference?
I'm not sure what else would need to be clarified or can be clarified. Is there?
Yeah.
I would like to see this come back and have the flexible start time removed from the policy. I then just move the 6 p.m. start time from ordinance to policy, but keep the same structure we have now with workshop at 5 sometimes when we have them, and then normal meeting at 6.
So you would eliminate the opportunity to move executive session up if time allowed?
Yes,
Okay.
because we don't know how long that's going to last.
Well, actually, typically they do. They're usually put not to last no longer than. So if it's 5:35 and it's going to be a 45-minute executive session, you wouldn't do it anyway.
Yeah, we can give an estimate, but discussions happen in session. They can go long.
Let's just go ahead and put it to a vote. I move to place the ordinance relating to city council meetings on its first and only reading by title only, under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Westland,
Nay.
Stigleader,
Nay.
Walker,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Good discussion. And I would assume, maybe I shouldn't, I better not assume, if we do this and we recognize an issue, we can address it, correct?
We can change it.
Okay. So go back to your point, Randy. If we do run into a situation where we decide to start an executive and we find that it did go too long and it was a inconvenience for the citizens, we can correct it. Maybe not that night, but we could prevent it from occurring again.
Mayor,
Yes.
sorry, we need 2 motions for that.
Oh, yeah, that was for the reading.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, ordinance. I apologize. Chris, thank you.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, Kootenai County, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for a repeal and replacement of Post Falls Municipal Code, Section 2.04060, city council meetings, providing that the remaining sections of Post Falls City Code shall remain in effect, providing for severability, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
I move to approve the ordinance related to city council meetings and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion seconds, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Stigleader,
Nay.
Westland,
Nay.
and Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks for catching me on that, Rhiannon. Next item up tonight is the Arche Annexation and Zone Classification Ordinance.
Thank you, Council. I think I'll pinch hit on this one as well. This is a follow-up to the zone classification and annexation for the Arche annexation. I think that was approved maybe the last city council meeting. There is a amendment. It looks like an Exhibit A was not uploaded to the, which has a legal description for this annexation. Can I pass these out?
Please.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
None of this means anything to me anyway.
So this would be page 5 of 6 of the PDF that was uploaded for the ordinance. I believe it would be put into place right before the map that is identified in Exhibit A.
The question I'd have, so this is an ordinance that we are being asked to approve tonight, correct?
Yes.
Has the ordinance, it's by summary only, so this, published by summary only, so this would not affect what would be published in the newspaper, correct?
We have a summary for publication that already contains that.
Okay.
If you notice in the ordinance itself, it just references an Exhibit A as the property legally described. So when it was uploaded, it was just omitted from page 5 of 6. So if you flip through the packet, there's a map of it.
Okay.
And that legal is already contained in the summary. It's just it didn't get put on the public portal.
So we're okay on the publication, though?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So what's before you tonight is the follow-up on this annexation of the property. I don't have a presentation on this one.
We'll just have a motion made and we'll go from there.
Yes.
I would
Yes.
move to place the Arche annexation and zone classification ordinance on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Westland,
Aye.
Stigleader,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Chris?
A parcel of land being tax numbers 20105 and 12011, lying within the southwest quarter of Section 6, Township 50 North, Range 4 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, Idaho, providing for amendment of the official zoning map and providing for an effective date hereof.
I move to approve the Arche annexation and zone classification ordinance and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Stigleader,
Aye.
and Westland.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Next item up, new business, the 2024 asphalt chip seal and fog seal contract. Ross?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Ross Junkin, Public Works Maintenance Manager. Tonight I bring to you a contract that we put out for bid and recommendation to award it. We have advertised, we actually did a pre-qualification process this time. There were 2 qualified contractors, only 2 that submitted. They both qualified, and we only received 1 bid of those 2, which was Poe Asphalt in the sum of $615,053.45. I put a comparison chart in here of low bids over the last 4 years, so you can see the prices have gone up rather substantially. For this year's budget, we have $400,000 dedicated just for chip sealing. That's the same as last year and the previous year before that. We plan to use those funds as well as street reconstruction funds to make up the difference to that $615,000 line. Looking at past chip seals as well, these are numbers from 2022. 197 center lane miles. So all these miles here on this chart are also center lane miles. And you can see the percentage of the city that each year we've been able to chip. Best management practice for chip sealing is 7 to 10 years. Every 7 to 10 years, you're trying to hit those roads. You're trying to hit your main roads that receive most of the traffic, but you do want to hit your residential streets as well. If we continue at this rate, it's going to take us a long time to get to that cycle. It's roughly 28 years right now instead of the 7 to 10, what we're currently doing. And you can see the numbers of what that would cost if we were to actually hit that. It would be about $3 million a year to hit that goal. I wanted to show you that as we're trying to make headway, but we only have a certain amount of funds. A couple years ago, we did a pavement conditions survey. We hired a company to come in, and they assessed all of our streets digitally. So we have an idea of what our roads look like, and they're actually in pretty good shape. They were actually surprised when they saw our roads compared to the surrounding cities that they've done. Spokane's one of them, and they said our roads are in good condition, and they suspect that's because we've been doing chip seal for years now. And that's every time a chip seal or new asphalt project comes through, it resets the index, which is this number, this PCI number, if you might be able to see that in small numbers, back to 100%. And then it slowly ticks down over time as cracks, patches show up, and UV rays get into it and start to degrade it. So we do have this data, and this is what we're using to identify streets that need to be addressed. And you can see only 1% is in the very poor and serious condition. Chip seal is the most cost-effective way to maintain our streets for the long term. When they get to a point where there's major reconstruction, that's a substantial cost, quite a bit more than what we're doing with chip seal. So it does pay off in the long run to continue doing these chip seals. As I mentioned, it seals it from water, UV rays, and it actually provides traction on that new wear layer on the top there. We're seeing the prices continue to go up every year, and we plan to use the budget process to bridge that gap. In fact, we have a couple $100,000 increase to that line item in this coming year's budget on the table. And we will be doing the future assessments of our streets roughly every 5 years, but we're looking at that and making adjustments. And every time we do a project, we upload that data into the system so we can reset it. So tonight I'm asking Council to award the contract to Po Asphalt Paving in the amount of $615,053.45 plus a contingency of 5%. Historically, we have not needed to use the contingency, but it's good to have it in case there's a change order that comes up. So a total request of $645,806.12. I'll take any questions.
Ross, we've been using PO for several years now, have we not?
We have bounced back and forth between Po Asphalt and Road Products Incorporated. Last year was RPI, so
Okay.
Road Products.
Several years ago, we had an issue where the job that was done was extremely poor. We had a lot of complaints. And I know staff addressed it, and to my knowledge, we've not, at least I've not received any complaints since then. I actually went up in the Highlands and looked at some of the work that had been done during that year, and it was bad. But that's why I was asking about PO, because they've been around, I don't know them, but I know they've been around for an awfully long time, so.
Yeah, since I've been here, I've not had any issues with PO, the project management, or the product.
Okay.
So-
And of course, the other issue that we saw is the cost.
Yes.
How do you control that? It's difficult, so.
Yeah, they tell me that most of the cost is in the emulsion, which is the oil that they place down for the rock to be pushed into.
Yeah.
and that's gone up.
Yeah. Any other questions, Ross? Comments?
I have a couple questions on that. So what is the expected lifespan of a typical residential asphalt city street that is in that recommended 7 to 10 year chip seal treatment?
So the asphalt, you're asking about the
Well, just the
asphalt
street.
or the chip seal or the roadway?
The roadway itself. Yeah.
There. Okay, so asphalt, depending on the roadway, so if you're in a residential section, there's not as much abuse that road is getting versus, let's say, Celtice. Celtice is getting built, but it's also built to a different specification. On average, it's 20 years, I would say, for a typical life of an asphalt road. Chip seal prolongs that, and we've seen that, especially here when we get the freeze-thaw cycles. Water gets introduced into those cracks, and it freezes, and it pulls it apart, breaks it apart, and then more gets in, and it just, you've seen roads where it's alligatored. In fact, I'm sure you can see right there. You can see that. That's called alligator. You can understand why that's alligator. That's what happens when water gets in and it freezes. So we're preventing that by putting chip seals over it, so it seals that up. We also have other ways of doing it with crack seal. Our crews are out doing that, as well as Durapatching, small areas.
So then my other question is, we're going to be using $246,000 roughly out of reconstruction to cover this chip seal cost.
Mm-hmm.
From an allocation standpoint, then would it make more sense, because I don't know the reconstruction amount in that account. I know you mentioned increasing the chip seal budgeted amount, but would it also make sense to reallocate some of the money out of the reconstruction costs if it saves on the lifespan of the street that significantly?
Yeah, we do use that money. So we have an in-house asphalt program as well. So our crews go out and we will grind off areas of road and then repave sections of roads. We probably pave, let's say, an average about 1.5 miles a year. So those funds on that street reconstruction go to do that. They go to fix our sidewalks, our ADA ramps, which are requirements whenever we do road work in intersections or near intersections. So that money isn't just, it's spread out quite a ways. And we're dipping into it this year to kind of make sure we get our chip seals down and not fall behind any further. In fact, last year we scaled back on our chip seal program and we didn't do nearly as much. Right here in 2023, we originally were going to do 6.48 miles. We pulled back to 4.87 to drop that cost down. It still wasn't 400,000, but I think it was around 430,000 somewhere. We were able to reduce that about 25% of that bid from last year.
I guess my question is, trying to get the best bang out of our buck for streets. If it's, and I know you probably have plenty of roadway to reconstruct and use that, probably more than you have funding for. So it's hard to kind of shift some of that order. Just trying to make sure that we're, if chip sealing prolongs our roadway lifespan that much, then, it seems like that would be a point of emphasis.
Yeah, it is definitely a high priority for us to make sure we're getting our chip seals, but we also have to get some of these roads repaved. They're past a Band-Aid. We are still Band-Aiding them because we don't have all the funds to catch up to all those roads either.
Yeah.
But,
And that's another question we receive is people that don't like chip sealing, they just want you to reconstruct the road. Well, it's significantly
Yeah,
more expensive.
significantly
So
more, yeah.
when we're reconstructing the road, it's when it's past the ability to be rehabilitated with chip seal.
yeah, it's when we get into this poor and very poor, that's the roads that we're in doing the asphalt work.
Thank you.
So we should be spending $3.3 million a year on chip seal if we're to do each section of roadway every 7 years like we should be.
Yeah, and that's just a broad number. It wasn't, I didn't dive deep into it because some of the residentials aren't as, there's not as much traffic to get into those, and they last a little bit longer, whereas our arterials break down much faster.
So of that 3.3 million ballpark figure, we have 400,000 allocated a year right now. That's a pretty substantial shortfall. And it looks like one of those areas where not being able to fund that today is costing us more money tomorrow, where we have to go back and reconstruct the whole streets because we didn't get the chip seal done.
Yes, it's a challenge. It's a budget shortfall for sure in this section. And we do the best we can with what we have.
All right, thank you, yeah.
Sure.
I would move to approve the 2024 asphalt chip seal and fog seal contract.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Stigleader.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Westland.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Russ. Next item up is the acceptance of the annual comprehensive financial report for 2023.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Faulkner, Finance Director. In your council packet, you'll notice there was, there was 4 items that I had put in there. One was the communication of governance, the internal auditor's report, the internal control report, and the compliance for federal programs. This year, like we've had in the last years, we've had Alpine Summit CPAs, which used to be Anderson Brothers, do perform the city's audit. And what they do is they start from beginning to end. They start with, they look at cash control, they look at when invoices are paid, how do we, they look at year-end cutoff to make sure that the invoices are in the proper year. And also they look at payroll, and one thing, fixed assets is a major one because that's what is constructed at the utilities, and also with the streets program is fixed assets. So they look at our books of those really close. And one thing they wanted me to go over for sure is the communication with governance. We had our audit, there was no issues with it. There was all significant transactions were recognized in the financial statements for the period they pertain to. There was no misstatements. There's no disagreements. There's no audit findings. And there were no adjustments that needed to be made after the statements were done. One thing I wanted to point out is on the, let's do this a little bigger here. A little bigger. The governmental balance sheet has changed since I started in government, and the issue with it is there are more items to add to it. So the last couple of years, we've had to add any lease income that's coming into the city, any future leases, because there's a potential for income. And the other portion that we've had to add to it is a subscription-based IT agreements. If you have an IT agreement for 20 years out, they wanted to show on the financial statements that there's going to be a expenditure sometime down the road. And so you will notice if you look at Exhibit 1 that's in our financial statements for governmental activities, there is a subscription agreement line. And so that means in the subscription, all the IT agreements are in general government, which is basically anything that's not a utility fund. And then you will look down below in deferred inflows. This is pertaining to the Percy pension, the city's portion of any liability if the pension system was to go default as of today. And the other portion down below is the subscription liability. And also on, if you look a little closer down here, there is a unearned lease contract revenue. As in the other one where it's mostly general government, most of the lease contracts are in the business type activities, which makes sense because that's with the cell phones, or the cell towers. There's the 911 cell tower is recognized in the general government. And then the other cell towers that are on water and wastewater are recognized in the business type activities. So if you want to go out to our website, you can look at the 140 pages of the annual report, or there's another portion that we do. It's called the Popular Annual Financial Report. And this is where I turn it over to the media department, and they make what I have in 140 pages look pretty in about 18 pages. So if we go through, we can skip. There's the talk about our parks. They added pretty narratives to it. Then you have on my stats page where I have demographics in the back of the report. they add pictures to it with the population and transportation with miles, how many police calls they have, how many water customers, how many wastewater customers we have. It's a little more reader-friendly than the version I put out, but since everybody is mostly drawn to pictures and not just numbers. And then she adds the narrative to it too to spice it up. And this is also a program that is part of the GFOA program, the Popular Annual Financial Report. We submit those to our media production and what I produce in the annual report to GFOA for certification. And they've won them every year since the inception on the PAFR. And then 15, let's see, so hopefully this year will be our 26th year of receiving the annual report with GFOA for the financial statements. So, like I said, makes it into a little easier. Like if say every dollar shows you how much goes to capital outlay, general government, public safety. And then when you pay your property taxes, what portion of it, a lot of people call my office and say, geez, my property tax bills went up. Well, it's not just the city portion. There's highway districts, school districts, North Idaho College, the library, fire and rescue, and Kootenai County. So that's puts it into more little illustrative pieces in the actual PAFR. Business type revenues, the city revenues. Charges for service are for the business type because they're the utility funds. On the cities, on the general government side, charges for services and also property tax, which is a larger portion of the revenues for the city. And that one's, like I said, 18 pages condensed, so it's much quicker than the 140 annual report. And I just need to have a motion for acceptance of the annual report.
I'd like to congratulate you on a clean audit report.
Thank
That's
you.
always an issue, that and internal controls.
Yeah.
And I know the city's been doing an excellent job in that regard since when Shelley was financial officer, and you've continued it. So I congratulate you and your staff and
Thank you.
for keeping those controls in place to make sure that the assets of the city are protected. So thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
I'd move to accept the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Stigluter.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Westland.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Next up tonight is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues that are not on the agenda. Seeing none. Administrative staff reports. Tonight we have none. Mayor and council comments. Don't have anything except, again, Bill, thank you for your time at the city and best of luck in the future. How about council comments?
Can we advertise for the Parks Day on Saturday, right, to come out and volunteer? Is that right? At the community forest on Saturday? Yep.
Yeah,
At
you
9
can.
o'clock?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. 9 to 12. I think you can come and help work on the community forest. I saw the flyer. Thought we could talk about it.
Where do you meet? At the trailhead on Riverview?
I believe that we're going to meet down at Camille Park.
Camille Park. 9 o'clock.
I'll be there.
Good. Thanks for bringing that up. I hadn't seen it, so thank you. Anybody else? We do not need an executive session tonight, correct?
We do not.
So the next motion is?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.